All righty, we are live again for another episode of Sports to Suits, where weekly I get to highlight former athletes that have successfully transitioned out of sports and are doing some amazing things in the world. And so I couldn't be more excited today than have my friend Travis Reed on, where we get to talk to Travis, learn a lot about his background and his story, and get some amazing tips and tricks on all sorts of things. So, Travis, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Amanda. I appreciate it.
Well, awesome. Well, as people are popping on, why don't you just tell people a little bit about, let's start with your athletic background because it's super impressive. So, why don't you share a little bit about your life as an athlete?
All right. Well, I'm a former professional basketball player. I played overseas for 10 years. I played in countries such as Romania, Holland, Germany, Australia, Ukraine, just to name a couple. Um, I retired about 10 years ago now. Yeah, basically 22. Yeah, 10 years ago now. So now it's just that, like you said, the transition into something different. So now I have, a couple podcasts, um, Travis Reed and Athlete's Journey, and Believe in UCLA. They're both on the Believe Network, on Spotify, and got some other things in the works that we talk about, me and you. So, you know what I'm saying? So, we're going to keep this train rolling.
We are. And if you're popping in, definitely let us know where you're from. Give us a shout out. Would love to hear from you. So Travis, so you played ball. Was that the
Mhm.
only sport that you played growing up as a kiddo?
No, I played actually every sport. I played. My dad was my coach. He coached me in baseball. He
Oh
coached me in
wow.
football. He coached me even in soccer. He was like, "You're gonna be the best shaped kid in life," So that was pretty much the thing. So I wanted. I didn't know what sport I was going to be good at. I just wanted to be good in a sport. I think my dad wanted me to be good in basketball, so in turn, basketball became my sport. I was really good in baseball growing up, but he was like, "We're going to focus on basketball."
So tell me a little bit if there are parents listening out there that are, have kiddos in sport, what was it like having your dad as a coach?
Very tough. Very
And
tough.
this is coming from the kids' perspective. So
Yes,
I want
yes.
people to understand, yes, this happens, but what is it like as a kid going through that?
Well, put like this: my father was in the military at the time. So he was very hard and like demanded excellence, and wanted you to, be your best at all times. So for me, it was a situation as a kid, just, I wanted to impress him. I wanted to impress him almost as much as I wanted to even win the game. Like if I won the game and I didn't impress him, I was kind of sad, to be honest. If I didn't win the game and he was like, "Son, I'm so proud of you," I felt like I won the game.
So do you feel like a lot of just like your excellence in sports originated from that and from that tough pressure from your dad?
Yes, I felt like he was my hardest coach. There was no coach I ever had harder than him. Because imagine this as a kid. Then the night before the game, the coach is talking to you. You get up in the morning, you eating breakfast, the coach is talking to you. Okay, and you on the way to the game, the coach is talking to you.
Yeah, you
Uh,
can't get away from it.
During the game, he talks to you. After the game, he's talking to you about the game, and then when you get home, he's talking to you about the game.
So if
So
you have parents listening in on this call, what advice would you give to them in this scenario?
just let your kids have fun. Teach them the fundamentals of the game, but just let them enjoy the game.
That is such great advice. I feel like as parents, because I've got a travel ball player, like I'm so like invested and I want to see her do so well. And sometimes super mom comes out, right? But it's not in the greatest of ways. So I think that,
Hmm.
we all as parents hopefully have great intentions with that. But sometimes from the kids' perspective, it's
No,
a little bit different.
agree. We all want our kids to be better than us, and that's why the reason why I couldn't be my son's coach, because when I work him out, sometimes I yell at him. I'm like,
Oh.
whoa, I got to back up, just because like I just want him to be so successful. And that's the same thing my dad wanted for me. He wanted me to be so successful that he was just like, I don't accept halfway or average. I need you to be above that.
So let's talk about, so you played ball, so you did
Mm.
all sorts of sports. When did you start getting really serious about basketball?
I would probably say like when I was about 10 years old.
Wow. So you were like fully committed at 10.
Yes, yes. Pretty much. I mean, I still played other sports, but my father was like, really on me about basketball. He felt that I had a talent for the game, and he felt that I should, like continue with basketball. Basketball to be my ticket out of where we were living, you know, at the time.
So you played basketball. So from high school to college, like how was the recruiting process for you? Was that something that just kind of came a little bit naturally? Was that a little bit of a challenge? Like what was that process going from high school to going to play college ball?
It was tough. I ain't gonna lie and say that it wasn't. Because like I was one of the top recruits in the country. So I was like top 40 players in the, entire United States. So I had, I don't know, like 250 scholarship offers from different schools.
How did you
Uh,
evaluate them all? Did you have obviously your family helping you evaluate all of them? Or like how did you like what came down to the decision of you're like, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna play here?
well, for me, the evaluation process wasn't as hard just because like I knew what school I really wanted to go to. There was other schools who impressed me through the process, but I knew that I wanted to go to UCLA. It was like being my dad's dream school. Growing up, I always wanted to be a Bruin. So that's pretty much how the process kind of. I was like, if they were recruiting me tough, I'm going to sign there. But but I had
But
other
what was
schools
it
that
like
I was
signing
interested
that
in.
paper? Like when you
Oh,
finally had that contract right there, like what was the feeling that you had when you signed that paper?
it was heaven. It was like the greatest experience ever. I remember my dad. He like he's not an emotional person at all, and he cried like one of the few times in my life that he actually cried because he was so happy that I was going to UCLA, and I was happy too. I
So
felt
you
I felt like I made him proud.
well, and you should like, did you feel proud too? Like, were you like, this is like, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to play. I'm ready for this. Like, all this hard work has finally led up to this moment.
Most definitely, I was really just like I said, super excited about the situation going to UCLA. I felt like the situation was like, wow, I finally made it to my dream school. This is my dream school. Like, when I went on campus for the first time, I was just like, oh my God, this is my dream. I can't, UCLA, no question.
So you were locked, you were loaded, you were ready to go. You were like, this is where I'm going. So what did it feel like stepping on that court for the first time? Like after you signed the paperwork, after you started like going through that process, what was it like to actually step foot on the court and meet your teammates?
The funny thing for me in that is like I grew up with all of them. All of them.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up with a lot of my teammates. Our recruiting class that came in, I knew all of them beforehand, and so we all grew up together. I like Baron Davis. He played in the NBA for like 15 years. I've been knowing Baron since I was 10 years old. So Billy Knight, I was on him. God rest his soul since I was like 14. Earl Watson since I was 15. Like I knew all these kids growing up, so it was just like family.
And you knew him off the court. Like you guys were friends.
So like I said, we grew up together. So like we played basketball against each other since we were young.
So when you started going to school, so like talk a little bit about the journey of what it was like to actually like not just the sports side of it, but the education side. Like what was like, did you have to get acclimated? Was it something that, was just like totally different? Or did you feel like you were in your element and it was just like you were ready to go?
No, it was a struggle. It was a big struggle, especially my first like we had to go to summer school before school started at UCLA because UCLA school started really, really late, like in October. So we were in summer school and I struggled big because I wasn't used to the freedom. living with your father, who's like military dude, you was like this, like boom, 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 boom. And he ruled it with an iron fist, so I didn't know how to handle the freedom. So like, oh, I get to stay up all night, or I get to,
Did
be
you miss
kicking
some
with.
classes a couple times?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I get to stay. I get to, talk to a girl all night. Like it was a bit of a struggle in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie to you.
How long did it take you to acclimate? Because we have a lot of like student athletes that are listening to this, and I think that they're probably like feeling a little bit of relief in regards to like, I'm not the only one that is
Mm-hmm,
going into school trying to navigate this whole new world. I mean, it's a
mm-hmm,
lot. Like you, as a kid going to the normal world, right? Like you get freedom, but if you're going into the normal world and you are also are an athlete and you're trying to navigate all that too, like I would imagine it's just a total, like, it is freedom like you couldn't believe. I mean, you've got, people that are cheering you on. There's all sorts of that stuff going on. So like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm sure that like the student athletes that are listening to this are probably getting a little bit of like relief of like, I'm not the only one that is having to try
Oh
to
no,
navigate this.
no, it's definitely like when you're a student athlete, especially at a big university like UCLA, like it's really hard to navigate. It was really hard for me to navigate. It took me basically all the way to like my second semester of my freshman year to kind of like, okay, got a little bit of a gist of it. When you're an athlete in college, they plan out everything for you.
Yep.
So like you wake up, 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever the case is. You got breakfast. You go to class. You go to class from 8 to 2. You go to weights from 2 to 3. You go from weights to practice from 3 to 6. After practice, you go from study hall. You go to eat. From 6 to 7, and then from 7 to 9:30, you go to study hall. So literally 13-hour days, all planned out.
Well, and then
And
anytime after that is freedom.
yeah. And so you're just exhausted and just trying to catch up for the next day. And so, like you said, like, any, current student athletes, like you'll get the hang of it later on, but don't feel bad if, you're struggling in the beginning.
So let's talk about your journey from college to international ball, because I mean, it's so fascinating to me. You've traveled and played literally all over the world.
No,
So like,
definitely.
what was that like going from, and talk about freedom, right? Like you go from college to now traveling the world playing basketball. Like what was that like?
Pretty much it was different. I got drafted like 59 or something in the NBA. And I knew that I wasn't going to really make the team. So I decided to go overseas. I didn't really want to play in what they call the developmental league or the G League, D League at the time. I was like, well, I want to go make that money overseas. My boy was like, go play overseas. So when I had to start looking up on a map, first getting a passport was hard. I didn't really understand how to do that. But then looking up on a map where these countries were. So I was like, well, I'll go over here and try to make some money. I was super happy that I got an opportunity to play in Bogota, Colombia was my first country.
So what was that like?
It was crazy. Nobody spoke English, not even the coach. I had a teammate who spoke like English, a little bit. So it was like, I talked to him. I didn't really talk a lot until the other Americans came because nobody really spoke English. I didn't really speak Spanish. It was just really different, really, really different.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I like.
Give me a story. Like, give me something that was just like when you were in Colombia. I mean, obviously we're live, so we can't be talking about some things, right? But like, give me just a story of something that just like really stood out in your time in Colombia.
I would say that everywhere I went, and I didn't really go too many places, but everywhere I went, I had 2 armed guards with me at all times, right? Now, they didn't have no police. The government was the police. So imagine if you're walking to the store. And I didn't really walk to a store a lot, but I said I walked to International Call Station. I had two armed guards, one in front of me, one behind me at all times. And that was just like a crazy situation. I'm like, I ain't never been like scared and protected at the same time, you know?
Did you? I mean, I would imagine there was a serious language barrier there too, and so you were just having to trust these armed guards walking around.
Well, pretty much like I said, I think they followed me. So whenever I would leave, I'd be, I'll give them that. They'd be, they'd be like, okay. And so they would get their gear and all that stuff and follow me. We would go. Like I said, my phone bills was crazy because I would call home 24/7. I would say
it was a little bit scary.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. The funny thing is, I went to Medellin. I went to all these places. This is before Cocaine Cowboys. So, so I was just a young kid, fresh out of college, just not knowing what's going on. But I enjoyed it very much because like the people were really nice. My teammates were nice. The people in the city were nice. And just like, like the energy of basketball, I didn't realize that. This is the first time I realized like the energy of basketball is not just a state thing. Energy of basketball is worldwide, and people love their basketball in Bogota, Colombia. You'd be surprised.
So where else have you gone? So you've played internationally all over the world. So what other teams did you play for?
Well, after Bogota, my first year was probably my most traveled year in a way. I went from Bogota to Poland, Warsaw, Poland.
Totally different.
Yeah, exactly. It's a totally different kind of scenario where, people are not as nice. It's just a different kind of vibe in Warsaw, Poland. After Warsaw, I got released because the coach got fired. And I went to France, France. And then I was in France for a couple weeks or a couple months. The coach didn't like my skills, so I had to go to Belgium. And then after Belgium, I went to Holland. I ended up in Holland. I know, long journey my first year, all over. The details of it, it's a different story. But yeah, a long journey to get to Holland. And in Holland, I played for 4 years. My first 4 years was in Holland, which was really nice. I played in the city not too far from Amsterdam my first year. And then my next 3 years, I played in a city called Groningen, which is like not too far from Rotterdam, which is the other big city in Holland.
So how long did you play internationally?
I played basically 10 years.
So what did you learn during that 10 years of traveling? And I'm sure that it's like, once again, like it is book worthy. Like there's tons of books I'm sure you could write in regards to this.
Right.
But what are some lessons? So if somebody is listening in that maybe even has an opportunity to play internationally, what are some lessons learned that you took away? Maybe the top 2 or 3 lessons that you learned in doing so.
I would say the number one lesson that I learned from myself. I don't know how other people will react, but like I played 10 years, and a lot of like teammates and friends could have played 10 years, but they couldn't handle the lifestyle, the situation. In Europe, it's much more slower than the States. It's a slow down society. Like they're really chilled. Like they go drink coffee for 2 hours just in the middle of the day. They relax. And so like what you need is a routine of something where, okay, I'm gonna get up in the morning, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna lift weights, I'm gonna do whatever I'm gonna do, go shoot. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna, take a nap, get ready for practice. No, seriously, you need a routine. You need a routine. Otherwise, you will be bored to death.
Okay. So have a routine, maybe be disciplined with that routine.
Be disciplined with your routine. And I would say just enjoy the area. Like a lot of Americans like, oh man, I'm just staying in the house. And I did that for the most part, but towards the middle and end of it, I started kind of going out, seeing like the culture of the city I was in and just trying something different because to pass the time, you need that. You need that. So, like I said, have a routine and enjoy the culture. Not necessarily going to all the clubs, but just enjoy the culture of the city that you're in, because it's a lot of tradition and a lot of like different sites and things like that. I mean, I was in big cities, so I got to enjoy a little bit more because they had more stuff to see. But I just enjoyed myself, like going out in the city, having a coffee at 1
Maybe not
a.m.
for 2 hours every day.
No, not every day. I mean, maybe once a week, go have a coffee, and just chill and just enjoy the moment of where you're at. I would say that.
So let's talk about the transition out. So when did you know that basketball was like you were kind of coming to your career end in basketball?
Well, I would say like when I got injured, I have a stress fracture in both my shins. I still have steel plates in both my shins to this day. When I started getting injured, and like then I had another injury, and then it was kind of like getting harder and harder to keep myself motivated to go. And I knew, like, you never know, no, I want to say, but when I was 32, I was like, you know what? Maybe I could squeeze out maybe like 2 or 3 more years. Maybe I could just come on, just give me the 36. Come on. But I would say that, God had different plans. God was like, nope, you're done. And literally, I finished out a good year in Australia. We went to the championship, lost in the finals. And then just like that, it was gone. I didn't get the offers that I really wanted, like as far as money. And I was like, man, it's time. My son was 3 years old. I wanted to kind of be around him more. I missed the first 3 years of his life because I was gone all the time. And so like, I just was like, okay, it's just time to retire,
So you went from Australia back into LA, correct? So tell me a little bit about like, what was that like? So you come back and this is where my true heart is like, I think that people need to recognize and understand the challenges as it relates to this. So tell me, like, when you got back into the States, you had your son and your family, and you were trying to get acclimated into now what's going to be a normal life. What did that look like for you? What was that process?
No, seriously, it was extremely hard. Extremely, extremely hard. So imagine you've been this like I started playing basketball when I was like 5, right? And then you go from 5 all the way to age 32, which is 27 years. And then after 27 years, okay, now I do something different. And you're just like, I don't know what I am besides this, you know? And in the beginning, it was a struggle. I thought I was really hard on myself. I was hard on myself. I hated myself as a person. I hated what I was at the time. I didn't like my family. I didn't like nobody. I was mad. I was mad at myself. I was mad at God even, because I was just like, why, God? Why couldn't I play more? Was I that big of a butthole? To like not be able to play more? Because some of my friends are still playing. A lot of my friends are still playing. And so for me, I was just like, why can't I still play? I still want to play. And I just felt like, it was just a really, really, really tough transition in the beginning, because I didn't know what I was without basketball.
So how did you figure that out? Like, let's talk about we don't have to go into like all the nitty gritty here, but like, how did you start figuring out like what life and purpose looked like for you outside of you just being a basketball player? Because and once again, when you're talking to people that have been in sports for so long, that's their identity.
No,
people
definitely.
ask you, who are you? I'm a basketball player,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how you respond.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how did you start figuring that piece out of like, what is Travis Reed outside of basketball?
Well, I mean, I was, like I said, I was blessed to play at a high level college. And then, even blessed because I'm at that 0.00009% to actually play professional. And so the process was just like figuring out, okay, process of elimination, right? What don't I want to do? Now, I didn't want to coach. I didn't want to train kids. I was kind of upset at basketball, so I didn't really want to stay in it like that. So I was like, okay, rule that out. Now I have a son to feed. So I have to make a certain amount of money, right? So let's rule these other things out, right? And then basically what it is that you like to do besides basketball, And I was like, well, I've dealt with many different types of people across the world, many different types of personalities, many different types of just different people. And so I was like, okay, I'm a people person. So maybe I could go into marketing and sales. And that's how I kind of process of elimination. Don't get me wrong. I did other stuff before then that I will not talk about.
Those things that you're not talking about, that's very common in the athletic community once they leave sports.
Yes.
And that's kind of like the black sheep or whatever. Like, you don't want to talk about it, right? Like, people don't want to talk about these things because that's the reality. Like, it's the dark reality of what a lot of people face once they leave the sport. And then, for me, it took me a long time. Luckily, I was a really young kid, but it took me a while to figure out, okay, like, what do I want to do? Who am I going to trust? Who am I going to talk to? And like, you're navigating that as a grown adult.
No, definitely. I feel like a situation where I can't I don't know what I'm doing, because like you said, like I'm 32 years old and I'm trying to figure out what the heck am I doing, What am I doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, like I took a job with Enterprise, right? It was my first job.
Well, and they hire a lot of former athletes.
Yes, and that's why I did it. I was like, well, okay, I gotta come. I think really like the small things that you think about is like, how do I make a resume, right? And like, I never made a resume for nothing in my whole life, and I was just like, man, like, how do you navigate that? How do you even do that? So I had a friend, my ex at the time, like, help me make a resume, and like, what do I need to say to get trigger words for people, like to hire me, because I must have applied to, I don't know, like literally like 5 to 10 jobs every day, like literally every day. And so like I applied to minimum, my goal was to get 70 jobs a week, right? 70 applications in a week. And so like, it was just, okay, you're not experienced, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you kind of thing. And I was like, look, I got to get a job. So I can't get frustrated. I'm too focused not, to get frustrated. So finally I got an interview and with Enterprise, and I got another. And then they liked my energy.
And athletes have really cool energy. Like, we're very disciplined. We're very motivated. There's a lot of companies that hire former athletes for that specific purpose. And as long as they've got, great leadership development programs, like, it could be a great entry place.
No, definitely. For me, it was a situation where I was like, like I got a job, and I'm thankful I have a job, and I'm thankful that I finally get some money to provide for myself as well as my son. That was my main focus at the time, was to be able to provide for myself and my son. And, like Enterprise was an opportunity to put me into the real world of work, and like I said, they grind you, and like, you work in 60-hour weeks a lot, and you're not making a lot of money. And I thought, like, the funny thing was, like, I thought I wanted to wear a suit and tie every day kind of job. Until I had to wear a suit and tie every day for my job.
They're so uncomfortable. Yeah. They are so uncomfortable, and they are not fit appropriately for certain people.
No. And for me, it was like, imagine like, California's hot. So like, you're sweaty. You have to vacuum out a car for a client, for a customer, and a situation where like you just like, oh my God, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like
But
this is
that was
I'm sweating. I'm sweating because I'm like dripping from this suit, this black suit I got on.
But that was the catalyst to get you continuous opportunities. So now you're in sales management and you've kind of grown and you've navigated learning the sales process and how do you now manage people. Tell me a little bit about, I want to dive into your media stuff too a little bit. But tell me a little bit about just kind of what you're doing now.
Oh, okay, no problem. Like I said, for me, like I said, the podcast thing started about a year ago, right? And a situation where, like my best friend Billy Knight, he had passed away, and I felt like his journey was, like his journey needed to be told along with other athletes who was the struggle of like how to deal with the transition, like what you're talking about. And so like I was like, my son had asked me, like, Dad, how was your overseas life? And I was like, son, that's a long and complicated answer. So it was like podcast. And so like it was like therapy for me in a way, because it was a situation where I needed to kind of get that story out, just tell people like it's great that you play ball and play professional, but it's not all what you think it is. And so that's how I started going into like, podcasting, and then like becoming, it rolled, podcast into like YouTube channel, doing a podcast and interviews, and other former athletes like, dude, can I tell my story? They would hit me up like, can I tell my story? Can I tell my story? And so like they would be like, yeah, man, so I've been interviewing other former athletes, men, women, current and former, about their journeys and just like how they started, how they got to their certain level, but most importantly, what happens after. Because once the lights go out, people will just be like, like they forget about you. But like, as a former athlete, your life has to go on, and it's a struggle. Like we talked about, during this show, it's a struggle. And
When do you feel like athletes need to start thinking through this?
I would say, not necessarily in the beginning, but like even halfway through your career, let's just say you're year 5, you're 26, 25, whatever it is, start thinking about like what's happening, what you're going to do next. Because that's our mistake as athletes. We think we're immortal because we're athletes. We think we're invulnerable to like pain and hurt and all this stuff. I would just say
because
like
you're told you are.
Yes.
Like you're conditioned your whole life to be almost superhuman in some
play through pain. You got a hurt ankle, so what? Tie it up. We get tough.
That's
you
what
fall
tape's
down.
for.
That's what tape's for. Just get tough. Get this. Get that. So for me, I was like, like you're taught to play through it, and so like you can't play through life. Period. You cannot play through life. You cannot play through the situation where you cannot play through life. You have to keep going forward, right? And just be ready for the punches of life, because life, it hits you and bring you to your knees if you let it, but you got to be able to go forward.
So you've talked to a ton of athletes. I get asked this question all the time too. What are like some commonalities that you see around former athletes, and not just like the tough stuff, but like what are some commonalities that you see for athletes that are going from sports to business?
That is a struggle in the beginning. Like I said, I think that I thought I was the only one that struggled. But to be honest, like a lot of former athletes, even the ones that have money, even the ones that have, everything you think you want, like they struggle. I had, a friend who played overseas with me who was a millionaire. Like he played overseas 15 years, played in Spain, Italy, Germany, like with a high class athletes. He had to go to therapy after, because he just, even if he had, millions in the bank, he just had to go to therapy because he just didn't know what was next for him, And like I said, in the beginning for the transition, it's just like finding a passion that you're passionate about. Not necessarily what anybody else wants you to do, but what you're passionate about, whatever it is you want to do.
So I want to bring that up with you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you love to read. We don't have to dive into details here, but I'm going to
Okay.
put you on the spot, my friend, because I know that you absolutely love to read.
All right. Right.
What kind of books are you into right now?
Well, pretty much, there is a book that I'm about to start. 52 reasons, 52 things sons need from their fathers, and then 52 things wives need from their husbands. I'm not married, but like I want to learn how to do that for my wife, future wife, and obviously my son. Um, I've read countless books now. I've read about four. Like I started last year. My goal was to read 5. I ended up reading 13 in books in a year last year. So a little bit more than a book a month.
What's your
And
favorite one that you read?
Good question. Uh, the one that I couldn't put down, there were 2 books I couldn't like stop. One was the 10X rule, three books. One was the 10X rule, and then one was like the Lakers Showtime dynasty, about like how the Lakers dynasty started. I like sports stuff too, but like the 10X rule was something I was like, man, I got to get to the next page. It was like, I'm excited,
You're fired up. I've got a good friend. Shout out to Eric Nowalski, who is with Sela Lab, just partnered with Grant Cardone. So he may actually be listening to this conversation. So you never know. I'll say that I love Chris Bosh's book. I told you, you got to read that one. Letters to a Young Athlete.
It's on my wish list. It's on my wish list. Trust me. I got it.
So, and the audio version is so good. So shout out Chris, like great book. I've got a college stepson that's playing ball right now, and like we've sent it to him for Christmas. We're like, you're reading this? It's so good.
No, yeah, no, definitely. Like it's so like athletes have a lot to say, and like for me, it's like I love reading about how the athletes, like Chris Bosh said something, in his Hall of Fame speech that success isn't necessarily measured by your success. Like being successful isn't necessarily met by your success. Success is measured by how you deal with your failures. And it's true in life, like people don't realize that, like all the things that you have to go through failure wise to get to success. Everybody just sees the success, but really it's the failures that drive you,
There's just opportunities to learn.
Yes.
Like I personally don't like the word failure. Like I know it's a word, right? It's an opportunity to learn. Like none of us are perfect.
Yes. Now you sound like Grant Cardone. Now you sound like 10X rule.
Well, I'm just saying, like athletes, executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, kids, nobody is perfect. Like we've got to get rid of this perfect mentality. I think athletes struggle with this, is the perfection mentality. Like they're just opportunities to learn.
No, it is. I think for me, it's like you have to learn from your failures more than you learn from your successes. Because in your success, it's like in wins. Like you can learn from your wins, but you really learn from your losses. Because what does your losses do? It gets you more focused. It gets you more locked in. It gets you more like, I got to do better. I got to do better. And so like, that's just how life is with any peer, athlete or not, like.
It also shows who you are at times at your core. Like if you got some anger stuff going on, like, hey, if you've got to figure out how to navigate that, right? And so sometimes that opens up the emotional side of like, what are some things that we're maybe struggling with just as individuals and humans?
No, look, I agree with you 100%. I mean, for me, it was like a situation that life, beat me down, right? But I had to get up off that canvas because guess what? Life will keep you there if you let it. And so for me, it was like, I got a son to feed. And that was my motivation in the beginning. Like, I got to provide for him and myself no matter what. And so now that I've done that, and now it's another goal, the next goal of something else.
So what is that? Can we do a little bit of a teaser of maybe something that you're working on?
Well,
we don't have to.
There's, I don't want to jinx one thing. We already kind of talked about one thing. I don't want to, like jinx one thing, but obviously the book thing is a passion of mine that I'm really passionate about. Reading books and just having knowledge and learning knowledge. And for me, like there is no other like men's club. Like as far as like women, you have that book club thing on lock. I'm not gonna lie. Like pretty much locked down by the women book club, you know. But there's something like I feel like there's men should have one of those too, you know. But like it could be for everybody. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not trying to say just men, but like there is. I don't see too many, you know, like book club guys who are just like, you know, like a bunch of people like that. I would
So if
love
you
to
were
bring that
listening to
together.
this and you are a guy or gal, whatever, that it also enjoys books, definitely reach out to Travis to connect with him. So as we're wrapping this up, what are the best ways for people to get in contact with you?
Well, pretty much you can follow me on Instagram at Travis W. Reed, all together, no underscore, no none of that. Travis W. Reed. And also on Facebook. And I post my what I'm doing on both those social platforms. If you want to listen to my podcast, I'm on Spotify. Travis Reed, An Athlete's Journey.
Definitely check it out. It's awesome.
Yes. You know, you get the chance to listen to, you know, like me interview former athletes. I just interviewed former NFL quarterback Gus Farrat, you know, about his journey. And like I said, you also can find Believe in UCLA, where I co-host a show about UCLA sports. And if you want to go back to the beginning of my podcast, Travis Reed, A Basketball Life, then you can hear strictly about those 10 years overseas with me.
Well, I am such a fan. I believe in you. I think that you're such an incredible person, and I'm so excited to see what 2020 has in store, or 2022. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, 2022.
Right.
Has in store for you. Oh my goodness. And I'm cheering you on, my friend. And so if you're listening out there, definitely go connect with Travis, watch his journey. 2022 is going to be amazing. And for everybody that continues to support our show, Sports to Suits, and that tunes in, I can't thank you enough. We've got an incredible list of athletes that we're talking to over the next couple of months. So I'm super excited to continue the conversations in 2022. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much for having me, Amanda. Like I said, I'm so happy to be here.
2022 is going to be awesome.